What's up, Blue Collar Millionaires? Back again on our Tuesday show. We got a very special guest, Tarry Summers, a friend of mine. He's in the Dealmaker family with myself. We he's got an incredible portfolio. He shoots it straight. He always tells it like it is. Terry, thanks for coming on.
Appreciate you,
And
Kev. How's it going, man?
It's
Appreciate
great. Tell us about where real estate is right now. What you see.
you. Yeah, real estate shit right now, right? I mean, dude, I see so many people like, oh man, we're still crushing it, man. We're still killing it. Let's be honest, man. No one's crushing or killing it right now. Like, I mean, there's probably a select few, right? But I mean, dude, all of us have trouble right now. You can't sell things on the market. In certain I mean, like you got markets like Atlanta. I've got buddies in Atlanta that are still doing pretty well, but most markets across the country, regardless of where you're at, like it's hard, it's tough to sell stuff. And then you get these people that, and I was one of those people that was trying to flip a bunch of properties before rates went up. Didn't get enough off my books. Now you have to convert these things to what? Rentals, which ultimately is my main business is the rental company. But then you have everyone else that's trying to do that. So what happened in the rental market? It got flooded. And now the people that can't traditionally rent, because rents have now compressed probably 5 to 10%. You're like, well, I'll just Airbnb it. So now you're seeing all these influx of Airbnbs and short-term rentals. And so now you're seeing that market kind of collapse, So,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, basically Jerome Powell took out an exit strategy for, all us real estate guys. And now you're seeing the effects.
What
market are you in, Terry?
Yeah.
I'm in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
Columbus, Ohio is a big market. I mean, I told you that. It's the 12th biggest, most populated city.
13th largest city. We're actually bigger than San Francisco, and no one knows
Doesn't
about
that
it.
surprise you, Chris?
It's wild,
Wow.
right? I mean, I'm born and raised here. Grew up on the South Side. Been here. Haven't really left. And everyone's like, "Oh, once you get to another market," I'm like, "Dude, we're getting 10 Intel plants. Austin has 2. We've got 10. I'm not leaving. Like I'm putting my flag in the ground here." But yeah, I mean, it's the problem with Columbus is it just doesn't have an identity, with the exception of Ohio State football. Other than that, it's like there's no identity. You go to San Francisco, there's identity with the architecture, the buildings. Savannah, even Savannah or like a Charleston has identities as a city. We just don't.
Do you think one of the biggest economic anchors in your area is the manufacturing, or is it across the board?
Yeah, dude, it's across the board. So one of the things that I love about this market, we always talk about jobs, colleges, big, huge conglomerate corporate companies, and we've got Chase's largest building here. Used to work there; it was terrible. But Chase is here, Wendy's is here, Limited Brands, Victoria's Secret. You've got what is it? Nationwide Insurance. I mean, you have all these big companies, and Ohio State's the largest university in the country. So then you got 60,000 kids that are in the middle of downtown every single year that now want to stay in Columbus. And the other unique part about it is, you're starting to see a lot of these rural communities, these communities of 20 to 40, 50, 60,000 people that used to be big manufacturing hubs. Those are getting shut down. And where do kids, they don't want to stay in their hometown. They want to come to Columbus because it's pretty much the only thing happening. So you're seeing that too.
Terry, what you got? Terry, you got a lot of single families, and I know you go back and forth with different people and why you like single family as opposed to multifamily. What was your plan, kind of like? Why did you get into single family, and then where do you see that going in the next 5-10 years?
That's a good question, man. So originally, man, I mean, I bought my first house in 2010. It was on the HUD Home Store. I mean, we're in the middle of the foreclosure crisis. And I saw a house that, it's funny, man. The first sip of alcohol I ever had in my entire life was in this house when I was like 16. I never did alcohol or anything in high school, but it was like that kind of turned me off from it. But anyways, long story short, I saw this house for like 90 grand. It sold for 160 grand in 2007. So I'm like, it can't go to zero. Why wouldn't more people try to, get into this real estate thing? So I bought the house. I put like 7 grand into it, and it was worth like 128 when I was done. So then I was able to do a cash out refinance of that property. And And, I'm like 25 at the time. And I got a check for like $27,000 from the bank once I did the cash out refinance. And my payment at that point was $710 a month, and it jumped to like $795 a month. So in my head, I'm like, my payment's only going up, $80, $85 a month, and I'm getting $27,000 in the form of a check. I'm like, dude, this is the wealth code right here.
Yeah.
I cut my cable. I actually saved money because I cut cable and a couple other small bills, but it kind of just got me excited. And it was a barrier to entry, man. I wasn't thinking apartments in 2010 or 2013 or even, I started to, and I actually bought my first apartments in 2014, I believe. But it was just a barrier to entry. You see a house, it, you've lived in one. You see these big monstrosities and you just can't fathom it and wrap your head around it. But you can wrap your head around a house. I'm like, if I can wrap my head around a bunch of houses, like it's pretty much the same thing, right?
I agree.
Absolutely. So 2010, you buy your first house. I'm assuming you saw some content, or maybe you just realized real estate was something that big guys play in, money plays in. So you get a little education probably. Then when did you start growing a team and really start doing volume? Because I know you're a big player in that space at this point.
Appreciate it, man. I still feel like I haven't done shit, but
we all do.
Yeah. Harry's being humble. He's got a lot of places.
But yeah, for me, man, it was, I worked at Chase, and this was 2013. I knew I wanted to get 10 grand a month. That's usually everyone's number, right? If I can just make 8 grand a month or 10 grand a month, I'll be free. And for me, I just wanted to go down to Key West and kind of chill out and live my days. But it's never in our blood to do that stuff. You sit on the beach for 2 or 3 days and you're like, the hell with this. I need to get back to work. So I that was the number. But Chase was so horrible at the time. Like I just sitting in a cubicle, we're just not built that way to just sit there and 10, 12 hours a day cube. Mm-hmm. So I was going through this massive depression, and it gave me the ability to take massive action. So what I did is I had 16 rentals at the time when I was at Chase, and I bought 16 and a triplex all on a Wednesday, closed on the last one on that Thursday, went on Friday, quit my job. And I was like, holy shit, how am I going to do all this stuff? And I was like, I gotta figure out a team real quick. So my first guy was a maintenance guy. So I had 2014 into 2013, I had, I think 39 houses at that time. And I figured out real quickly I had to have a maintenance, right? Because I can't fix anything. I can change locks, and that's about the extent of my wheelhouse there. But so that was when I had the team. My first guy was a maintenance. Then I picked up another maintenance guy once I got to about like 70 units. And then right around 2016, I went through this phase where I was listening to guys like David Lindow, Robert Kiyosaki, some of the big apartment guys. And I bought a 16 unit, a 24, 36 unit, this office building, which is a 5 unit. So I started buying more and more units and kind of dabbled in the multifamily. So then I gave everything to a property management company. That was like the biggest no-no. So if I was tied in a contract with 2 different ones, each for 12 months apiece. And that was a extremely horrible experience, especially like when you're writing them checks every month. You're like, listen, guys, I need you to make me money, and you guys make money off the property. But it ended up where they would come to me some months like, hey, dude, we need a check for 20 grand. We need a check for 30 grand. I'm like, you got to be shitting me. I can't survive like this. So I actually, to final that up with the team, I brought everything in-house in 2018. So I brought my management in-house, did all my own maintenance, all of that stuff. And I started with basically an acquisitions guy, a leasing agent, my wife, who was basically a catch-all. And then I had another office person. And then on Instagram, you get interns for basically nothing. So I had like 3 or 4 interns just floating around the office doing what I needed them to do. Yeah. But that was kind of my story with just how to grow the team. But problem with real estate is it takes so much to close one transaction, and you're like, oh, now your profit margins go down because you need more people to service these properties.
So what about your financing obstacle? Most folks say the barrier of entry to anything, whether you're buying a business, where you're buying real estate. And here's what I love. Me and Kevin both play in the real estate and business side. And the same strategies that are used for real estate are used for business,
Absolutely.
and the same for business are used for real estate. The only difference I've really seen between the two is you've got now cash flow happening with the business, and you've got wealth generation happening with the real estate. So how did you scale so quickly? I mean, you were at 70 units. It looks like an 8-year period. I'm going to say you were probably higher than the 70 units at the 8-year period. How were you flipping money so quickly and being able to gather that much real estate? Were you just loaded before you started?
No, I wish, man. I mean, to buy my first house, I sold like part of my football card collection. I mean, I lived broke forever. I mean, this is my first watch I've ever bought. It took me 11 years to buy this thing. I mean, I still got an S10 outside that I'll still roll around in. You know, I'm not a materialistic guy, man.
Yeah,
that shit doesn't really mean a whole lot to me. But so living broke, number one, that was it. But one of the things I think was a unique ability was the ability to go to these small local mom and pop banks, get them to believe in me. And what I realized real quickly is if you go outside of like your major metro and you go to these small mom and pop banks outside of the major metro, they can't do business other than, you know, the business in their small town. So they need to get into the major metro, and which means they got to take more risk on people like me who are young, hungry, motivated, but is going to be a good steward of their capital. And I was able to leverage these community banks. So I was always refinancing stuff. I mean, I was like, man, if I could get my hands on just 15 grand from a refinance, I'll pay the fees to do it, because then that gives me the ability to buy another property. So I think the ability to use these banks has been very, very crucial. Because I didn't really start even wholesaling deals until I went to Mark Evans' first event. Was that 2018 maybe? And I'm like, man, if I just do like 40 or 50 grand in wholesale a month, he's like, shit, that's easy. Why don't you do 400 or 500? But that's Mark. But for me, man, it was, you know, just trying to continuously like value add these properties, siphon my cash back out, re-leverage to buy more stuff, Burr method. And, you know, then eventually you're like, oh, I can't do this all the time. So then you got to add in other income streams. You know, now we have a construction company that, you know, that basically feeds our business and some other businesses, the wholesaling, the flipping. You just get these different revenue streams, man, to keep everything going.
I love that.
You wrote a post the other day. I love it. I know your story. So you were talking about getting out there and getting in the weeds, like literally. You were doing different stuff. You were leading your team. Like you talk about cleaning toilets, all these other things. It's just been my experience, especially on this Blue Collar Millionaire show, Chris, where we find the guys who are successful do that. They get in there. There's this new thing out, like find everybody to do everything, and you just sit back and you're like this. And when sometimes I talk to young guys who are 30 years old, they haven't done shit. And they're telling me how they're going to buy this $1 million business and how there's a guy, he's going to run it for me.
Yeah.
Like, bro,
Sure.
It's not going to go like that.
Sure.
It's the same people who think they're going to buy 50 houses and it's going to be passive.
Yeah.
Right.
And there ain't shit passive about real estate.
Yeah, there's nothing passive about this. So that's why I love. So tell us about. So you see these shifts. Those are the guys. These are the people who always stay successful. Recession hits, things hit, problems hit. They dig in, and
you got to dig in.
You got to dig in.
You got to solve problems.
The other way.
There's you know, I like Gary Vee. Don't get me wrong. But he always talks about being in the clouds and being in the weeds at the same time. So you got to take a step back, whether it's a vacation, a mastermind, or something, to kind of look at your chessboard from a bird's eye point of view. But at the same time, you can't be afraid to be a fucking pawn and get your shit in there either, right? And the thing is, it's like that meme where it's got the guy who's like leading the charge from the front, and his guys are in like the chariot or whatever, and then you've got like the other person that's a boss that's actually sitting back here like whipping their guys. You can't be that, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at anyone that's built a successful company, very rarely can they just sit on a beach on a laptop. I mean, you can have that as a maintenance business, a lifestyle business, and that's cool, but it's never going to grow into anything, you know, past a certain point. You know, someone's got to be there to drive culture. Someone's got to go to be the leader. You know, someone's got to lead from the front. And unless your guys have equity, I mean, they're not going to care about it as much as you do. So you have to give them incentives and reasons to care. And if their owner doesn't care, why in the hell would they?
Yeah.
That's just a stance I take, man. I don't know. I think a lot of it just comes from my dad, honestly. I mean, he's one of the hardest working dudes I know. And, you know, but he was one of those guys that's just like, hey, there's a brick wall. You run through it, put your head down, you know, spit on it, growl, run through this brick wall. The thing I do like about these kids today, though, is they're like, hey, there's a door right here. I'll just go open the door instead of beating it up against a brick wall. But, you know, you got to have both of those mentalities, especially right now as we're in the middle of this recession. I mean, I don't know. They can call it whatever they want, slow down, soft landing. There's nothing soft about this. I mean, they're laying off people left and right. But now is the time you got to be willing to dig in, because those doors don't exist to go through anymore, right? Yeah. And the people that dig in the most are going to come out victorious.
Yeah. These moments right here is what creates resourcefulness. This is when the genius shows up. When your back's against the wall, you got nowhere else to run. You can't be quiet. You can't be lazy, or otherwise you're going to starve to death. And so you begin to get resourceful. You turn into that MacGyver and start makeshifting shit so that you can get out. And I agree with 100% everything that you just said. Those most successful individuals are typically the ones that start. Here's what I like. The ones that started with nothing, they didn't have the hand up. Those are the ones that tend to be the most successful, because they learn that resourcefulness in the early days when they didn't have money to buy their way out of problems. Then when they get to a level of success where money's flowing, now you start seeing them play more of, as Mark would say, the magician. They're buying their way out of problems. But before, they just had to grit down and make it happen. I mean, I was in a crawl space yesterday because I had to go show up at a job and came out with cobwebs all over it. Yeah. My foreman looked at me and he said, Chris, your jacket was so nice before you went into that crawl space. I said, yeah, it's just a little dusty. He said, no, you're going to want to wash it when you get home. I know you.
That's awesome.
For years, I was always working, but I used to drive around in my car with Timberlands in my trunk, because if I stepped on site, I was going to get involved.
Yeah.
And I had ruined a couple pairs of sneakers doing that. So I was like, I'm going to have these boots. But like, I got this sweatshirt right here. It's the 10,000 Building Club. And I only give them, I hand these out things like black belts. So I have one. 10,000 buildings I've been on and cleaned myself, apartment buildings. And that's just one business. So like, guys see me with that. If they meet me, guys in the van, if you have that, lets everybody know how many you've done.
Absolutely. Dude, that's like your military stripes, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know? And you guys seen that meme? It's like every guy who worked on a house, and he's like, I think it's like Leonardo DiCaprio, he's smoking a cigarette and he's being like, look at that, I built that. And I think it's hilarious, because every old guy that's in the trades is like, you see that right there? I built that with my bare hands, right? But the problem is we don't have that type of attitude anymore in this country, and it's a huge problem.
Yeah,
we need to get back to being proud of the things that we do. You know, not sitting on a beach sipping Mai Tais. That's cool. I like doing that, but it's way more fulfilling, right? Like to be the one that says, I did that, I accomplished that. You know, I was a part of this project. And think about how our teams feel too, right? I mean, yeah, everyone needs a vacation every once in a while, but, you know, just rallying the troops around a common cause, man. I mean, it's really nothing more fulfilling, really.
Yeah. I think marketing.
Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
I think marketing has really just the day of social media and everything. And I love technology. I think we're much further ahead in life because of technology. But with that, you get some negative. And marketing has really taught us that they preach that get rich quick mentality. Like, do this and you're buying a Lambo. And the reality is there's a ton of sacrifice that's made. There's a ton of knowledge and studying that has to be gained to get that skill set. You've got to put the hours in to become the master. And then those that put that time in are the ones that get noticed. The ones that we're looking at saying, I want that, I want to be like them. They fucking put the due diligence in. And it's just hard to find those that are willing to make that sacrifice for the tomorrow. We all want it now. It's that microwave generation mentality. And our granddads weren't that way. They were like, I'm going to work my whole life I'm going to bust my ass, and then I'm going to have something to talk about later. And that's why they drive by and say, you see that? I built that.
Yeah.
I remember installing the plumbing in that house when it was being erected.
Yeah. See, and that stuff is so cool to me. Like, I did a Facebook post on, I think it was maybe Monday or whatever, but I was talking about my weekend. I'm driving around to some Airbnbs because our picture company, who we spent thousands of dollars with, took some very shitty pictures. And I'm wondering why these Airbnbs aren't really popping off. And yeah, there's a slowdown and this and that, but I can control what I can control. And if I've got shitty pictures, I'm going to go by and take the pictures. Right. But as I'm going by some of these places, I'm like, it does bring back some memories. Like, and you can't get emotional about these places and these properties. Ultimately, they're there to make money. But you're like, man, I remember when I slept in that house and I slept on the floor, and, you know, me and my buddies had a case of Bud Light and we were painting till 2:30 in the morning, and, you know, just stuff like that. But that type of work ethic, I don't really see it. You know, it doesn't sell. And quite frankly, I think that's what it is work does not sell. You know, no work sells.
Right. And it feels good. It's like, it's part of your journey. You get up, you get to work. You're part of a team, or you're doing it by yourself. Sometimes I did tons of stuff by myself. I never even thought like, it was like, how do I get away from this? How do I stop doing this all the time? It was just what I did. Next thing you know, your day's over and you get back at it. But yeah, there's just this new thing of like, everybody wants to get rich real quick. I mean, that's not a new thing, but it's much more in the last few years.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I knock these guys constantly.
Yeah,
because it's just it's comical to me. But I have an issue with someone coaching and teaching business when they've never done business, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you get a lot more respect as a coach on a team or whatever if you were a player at some point. You know, there's a lot more of a process to earn respect from your teammates your players if you've never played yourself. So I take issue with someone that's never been in the trenches trying to teach me how to be in the trenches.
So 23-year-olds aren't gurus. It's hilarious when I see it, man.
And you know, I tend to have a little bit of a younger following, but you know, I tell it's the same thing, man. You're going to see a lot of these guys online, and it's all cap, man. They're, you know, they make up numbers. Oh man, I just bought $1 bazillion worth of real estate. Blah blah blah. Like shut the fuck up. No, you didn't. Like, just tell the truth, man. But you know, I think people start seeing through the bullshit. And I'm in this for the long term, man. That's why I'm in real estate. It's a long man's game. But eventually truth comes out. You got to be honest with your audience, your people you're educating. And I think, you know, if you're in it for the long haul, people will be attracted to that, man.
Yeah. And these young guys, there's they compare themselves to people on Instagram and stuff. If you're in your 20s, and we'll talk about, Terry's got a group you can get in. Like, if you're listening to people who've bought hundreds of houses, it's such an advantage. I was winging it. You know, I bought my first house. I did a Burr method before it was ever called the Burr method. I didn't even know what that was. I was just figuring it out. And then somebody, as Chase told me one day, he was like, you could refinance that. How's that house going? And I'm like, really? I just bought it. Yeah. I didn't even know. I was like taking all my cash from cutting lawns to fix it up every night.
Dude, I will say that, like, when I first got that's funny. When I first got in, there was a guy by the name of Dean Graziosi, and he was like the infomercial guy on TV. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You remember when those were things, right? Now you do it online instead of on TV. But I bought his books, started reading them. I'm like, man, all I gotta do is put a sign in the yard, and people call me to buy their house. Like, it seems so simple. But that's kind of how we had to learn. And, you know, pre-YouTube, I mean, YouTube was a thing, but it wasn't a thing like it is today. But fast forward to today, I mean, we talked about VAs for God knows how long last time we met up, but you can have a VA. They're like, oh, I don't know how to do this. Get on YouTube, search it. Okay, it's done.
Yep.
It's wild, man. The advantage that people do have today versus, you know, 10 years ago or 12 years ago, it's massive.
And the incredible thing is they can go, of course they speak English, but they can go YouTube it in their own language. Yeah. So I don't look for the YouTube thing for them. You go find it, because you find however you want it to be taught to you.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's crazy. Like the VA thing, I didn't hire a VA. I was always scared to until maybe 3 years ago. And it was one of the biggest game changers ever. But again, it just goes back to being a human being and realizing that they're not robots. They're human beings who can think on their own. And quite frankly, dude, they're better than us. Most of them are way, way smarter, way better, and way more resourceful than we could ever be. And you just, once you figure that part out, it's a game changer.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to hear about, so we're talking about VAs, which instantly made me think about your personal branding, because maybe it's just I liked a couple of things of yours on Facebook, but I feel like you've had a massive uptick on your content that you're putting out on social. And I'm assuming that you probably have some VAs helping you with the editing side of it. Maybe not. What's your thought process behind why all of a sudden, or maybe it's not been all of a sudden, but why you're putting so much effort into your branding, personal branding portion?
Yeah, for sure, man. So I'm big on KPIs, but I keep my stuff simple. I don't need a ton of data. I just need the very macro data. And in 2020, I looked at the amount of deals that we did, and I looked at where our deals came from. Like 50% came from cold calls. We did another 20% miscellaneous. We had some direct mail campaigns that went out, stuff like that. We were doing RVMs back then when it was a thing. But 35% of my deal flow came from social media that was free.
Wow.
And I'm like, holy shit. Like, my team's depending on me to be able to put content out, to be able to continue to get deals. And I don't have to spend as much money. This is a no-brainer. So for me, it's like, everyone eventually pivots into, some type of the education space or whatever. And for me, I'm pivoting into that space to be able to create partnerships and deal flow for the future, not to, bang people for, whatever. Right. Let's be real. We make way more money off of deals than we do teaching. But there's a satisfaction part to it where you're seeing someone's success, and that's cool. You're inspiring other people, and you realize that, hey, I am in a position of, some type of authority. And again, like guys like us, we still feel like we haven't done shit. But, when you can create partnerships with younger guys or women, and you start to watch them grow, it creates loyalty with other people, and those people will follow you forever. And it's just a win-win, man. It's kind of like I call it the life cycle of the real estate investor. You start out, you wholesale, eventually you flip, then you start realizing I got to get some rental income. Then eventually you start doing some others, and eventually you have to kind of pass it down. And then you're using this incubator of people that you're teaching to be able to create deal flow for yourself. So for me, to bring that full circle, I want to create partnerships in the future with people that I know, like, trust, and want to do business with in the future.
I love that, man. What's your team look like for you to be able to post so consistently?
On that side, so we have literally it's a VA, and I got a full-time content guy. So he basically shoots, and honestly, like I'll see people's content, like Sean Whalen, huge fan of that dude, and I'm like, how in the hell does he write this? And I'm like, well, eventually you get better at it, and
right.
Like I made a post on Monday, and I was actually late to our team meeting by like 3 minutes because it took me like an hour and 20 minutes to do. But I'm like, hey, how important is that going to be? Not going to see the direct return until we look at our KPIs at the end of the year to see how much all this stuff actually contributed to us getting more deals.
Yeah.
So it's the future, man.
Social media is so powerful. Whatever anyone thinks, it's much more than you think. We're all doing it. I remember when I went to Tim Brotz's mastermind 2.5-3 years ago, and during it, he said, I want everybody to get up on live, or make a video. And I was like, nah, I ain't doing that. That's how I was thinking about social media. I didn't do it. And all these people were like going around the room, and I was just sitting there like texting on my phone. And even a year and a half or 2 years ago, when I got in the DM, Mark was promoting his book, Me Economy, and wanted to do a live with all of us. I didn't even want to do the live. I was like, if he doesn't bug me about it, I'm not going to do it.
I'm just going to fly under the radar here.
And now I'm like, yeah.
Now you're killing it.
now I'm on live all the time. My girlfriend's like, what are you on social media all the time? I'm like, it works. I get a lot of, and I meet all these cool people.
Yeah,
you do.
I got Brandon Motok. He sent me he sent me a note and a shirt yesterday, and we were going back and forth this morning. He's a great guy. I don't even know him in person, but I feel like he's a friend of mine. And you only meet them on social media.
Absolutely, Chris. I did want to. I meant to add this in here. So, but what a couple things like from an X's and O's standpoint that we do shoot our podcast every Wednesday religiously. We have our Scalers Only community, so we meet at 4:00 every Wednesday. My team, we do a 1-hour call every single week. We go downstairs immediately and shoot our podcast. We take that content, and then between the VA and NOSA, our video guy, they'll kind of chunk all that stuff up. And then when I write something, I tell the VA that's in that side, like, hey, if I misspell something, leave it misspelled, because that's me. But when I got like a run-on sentence, can you just put like a period in there and then give me a different paragraph or something? And then she'll do that, right? But it's all my words. But if it's misspelled, it's misspelled, man. Because that's actually one thing I learned from Mark Evans. He's like, dude, people are not going to think it's you if it's super clean, and if that's not you, and if it's just, you misspell some words. Like I misspell the word decision all the time. I still can't spell it. I don't know if it's the S or the C or the I. And
I suck at spelling too, man.
And nobody cares.
No one cares, dude. People like it more. Yeah. Because they know it's you. And going back to what you were saying, Kev, like when you do that, man, none of us are going to be everyone's cup of tea, but we're going to find people that vibe with us and attract with our energy. And there's going to be people that don't vibe and attract with our energy, and that's okay. But the whole goal of this thing is like to be able to find a tribe that you can roll with long term. And I mean, no one wants to, buy a shit ton of properties and quote unquote make it and sit on a beach, around a fire by themselves. They want to bring all their homies with them that have been rolling with them for the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. That's so true that like the algorithm will find the people that are interested. And then the people you think like, oh, I don't want my family or my sister. That's why sometimes our high school people that they went to school with, they think those are the people who are going to be looking at all this stuff and judging them. But the truth is those people don't even see your stuff. It's funny. At one of the holidays, I wasn't there. My mom was telling me, because she's always commenting on my posts, and she was saying that, oh, so-and-so, your cousin was saying she loves your posts, and they were talking about it. And your sister was saying, I don't see your posts. My sister doesn't see them because my sister's a great person. She doesn't give a shit about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like the algorithm doesn't. They're just like, she doesn't want to see stuff about buying businesses, so it doesn't show it to her. It shows her stuff she likes.
My mom, I put up we have these movie posters in our office of like my favorite movie. One of my favorite movies is Scarface. Yeah. And I get a picture of Scar. I put it up. My mom's like, you need to take that down. I'm like, how'd you see that? She's like, I see everything. And then, but then again, like she'll ask me, hey, did you see about your cousin's what? I'm like, no. It was on Facebook.
I don't see it.
Like, no, she doesn't call it Facebook. She calls it the Facebook. She's like, it was on the Facebook. And I'm like, no, sorry. Didn't see it.
Something I've noticed, a pro tip here for everybody who's watching, but I've noticed you do it and a lot of others, is you're repurposing like your podcast. You'll take your podcast, chop it up, edit it, and now you're dropping it on Reels. And I seem to find that I get newer viewers pulled in by posting on Reels and then being able to repurpose things. Like I've got a podcast I haven't started repurposing yet, but now I've got all this content that's already pre-recorded and I can start chopping it up. And so now I've got this vault of content that can be dropped on all of these different channels. But if I put them in the Reels, it seems to bring me in a little bit wider audience view. Do you see that as well?
Agreed, man. 'Cause like even us just going back and forth, completely unscripted, dude, that's when the most fire shit happens. And like the podcast, like it's when the most fire shit happens. So it's like, but then again, like we were talking about this at our mastermind, Kev, like, I'm like, man, I'll say this thing that would just, it blew my mind. And I'm like, man, I should have wrote that down or, and then, but the camera guy, he doesn't understand that was fire. And then it just kind of gets lost. And I don't have an hour and a half to go back and rewatch it. So I think the next step is eventually getting some type of like producer or, maybe like an intern or something like that to go back and pick out all the nuggets from this stuff. Someone that's in the bit that is aspiring to maybe be in the business or something like that to just kind of produce the content,
I think that's key. You have to have somebody who understands your rhythm and enjoys the show they're watching because they can find the nuggets. Right, Chris? We've done it a few times where I've had one of our VAs because he watches all these shows. Mm-hmm. What's up, Dan Mark? Because he's going to watch this when he wakes up. But he will then watch it on like 2X and clip a couple things, and we send them to guests and stuff. But I would love to have somebody who's like really sees what we're doing and then just watches that and then just finds things and edits it and puts it on there because we're not going to go back and watch all this stuff,
No, I mean, and I try to, especially our podcast. I do watch those, and I'm like, hey, and I'll send that over, and he's like, no, that sucked. I'm like, dude, it was awesome, right? And then just trying to, and again, I'm trying to figure this whole content world out myself. I think we all are, but I think that is key to have someone that understands, like when you say something that's X's and O's and it's completely helpful to your audience to be able to take that, crop it, and turn it into a reel instead of just, something that might not be as important or something that's more general.
Well, hey, to switch gears, I want to talk because this is something we were talking early on, but about buying businesses and maybe how you pivot. Mm-hmm. And I think you're like the perfect avatar. And I'll tell you why, because real estate guys who've been successful buying, it's the same stuff. They know how to find deals. They're just going to do it. They know how to negotiate them. They know how to finance them. And then they know when they're doing as much as you've done, they know systems. They've built systems out. It's like, it's so similar. Where Absolutely. I think that's why when we were talking in Pennsylvania and we were having a conversation, you were talking about the HVAC and the supply chain. I knew it. I was just thinking, if Terry gets one of these, I already know what's going to happen to it. He's going to make a lot of money on it. I already know. So,
no, man, I just, again, man, I think we've been like push this narrative and maybe it's subconsciously or online or whatever that, a service-based business with people is going to equal headaches. Dude, the real estate business is the biggest headache business I've ever been in. Yep. Dude, I mean, there's times where because I used to own a brewery back in the day, and that's a very complex business because you've got retail sales, wholesale sales, but then you got to leave enough for your tap room, food, people. There's times where I'm like, there's so many pieces of the process in real estate that I'm like, hell, the bar would be 10 times easier than this, knowing what I know now, of course. But yeah, there's just a lot of different moving pieces with real estate. I think Gary Harper was talking about the 212 steps to actually flipping a property. I'm like, because we all got those flow charts in our business, use Lucid charts and figure out, hey, this is step 1, step 2, step 3. Mm-hmm. He's like, there's 212 to flipping a property. Think about that. 212 steps to a process to flip a property. When you break it down really granular, I'm like, shit, man, that's insane. And in a gutter business or an HVAC, it's very simple. You just need to have good people and be a good leader and drive good culture. But it's way more simple. And I just think that, the narrative hasn't been, the narrative's been go into real estate, get yourself an Amazon business, buy crypto instead of, dude, just buy a business. Especially in real estate. To me, just like our construction company already, I bought a construction company last year and brought my father into the business, which has actually worked out great. He's very happy. His stress levels are way lower. But within a year, we've kind of got everything dialed in. And now we're just taking the real estate processes and moving them in the construction company. And I'm like, yep, dude, we got to figure out how to buy this HVAC company. We got to figure out how to buy an electrical company, buy a plumbing company. Later today, actually at 3:00, I'm meeting with a broker here in town to look at a 25,000 square foot warehouse that's literally like nice from my office building. And I'm like, I'm just seeing the vision. Like, hey, if I can put these pieces together, you got to think too. A lot of these mom and pop businesses, these are guys that maybe might not be the best business person, or let's be real, a lot of people are not paying their bills right now. You're seeing AP climb from 30 days to 60 days, 60 days to 90 days. And for a lot of businesses can't withstand that. So I think you're going to see a lot of opportunities. I'm sure you guys are already seeing it with people that are just struggling right now to keep everything going, with, you know, just the way that real estate's going.
Man, business is the low hanging fruit at this point. And I heard, I was listening to a podcast, M&A type podcast, and they were talking about, you know, the highest multiple on a business is the one that you don't want to sell, because it's the one that's the absentee owner. It's got all the systems. It's got the marketing dialed in, the operations dialed in. You know, they've got their AR low on their paying. But what happens is you find these that are ready to sell, and the mistake is these owners wait till they're burnt out. And then they get seller fatigue after they've been poked through a couple of times. And then they just start letting it go. And there's so much opportunity there. And it's the exact same thing. It's just crazy how so parallel it is with real estate. You guys are going in on real estate and you're buying someone's problem because you're solving it, but you've got the systems to correct the problem. Same thing with the business. You're going in, fixing their problem. You're able to give them some cash to walk away with. They don't have to worry about the day in, day out. And then you just plug in what you already know are successful systems and how to run a team. It's the low hanging fruit. Like, I think every real estate guy should be looking at buying a business that can bolt on to their real estate and look at what you're currently paying for. Like you said, you got your HVAC. Almost every guy says HVAC and plumbing is their highest expenses on real estate.
Yeah.
Then you start looking at your cleaning and your maintenance, your handyman services, that type stuff. Even if you've got it in-house, maybe you build something out of your in-house team and start marketing it to other retail folks. I got a local real estate guy that did that. He's doing very successful, plugged in a sales guy to start marketing it. And it's like $85 an hour he's charging, something like that.
Wow.
And I asked him how he was doing. He said, dude, we're doing fantastic at this point. It's just a matter of building the team up so we can service more.
I love it, man. There was a guy I was talking to yesterday. He was, so we paid him, I think, like $15K to help us out with our Airbnb business. And so he helped kind of structure everything, build everything, teach us how to use Breezeway, Guesty, and all these different things and systems and automation. He came in yesterday, I think, for his final, like, you know, coaching appointment or whatever. And I'm like, dude, how bad is Airbnb taking a hit right now? He's like, it's bad. And he's got, I think, 10 cleaners on his staff, but he only knows Airbnb. And I'm light bulb, right? And like you talked about cleaning business, right? Yeah. You could expand that, go to commercial, use your contacts, spin that off. And like with us, I mean, we have a full-time cleaner on staff through the construction company, and she cleans and paints and all that type of stuff. But yeah, I mean, you can use these people within your business, make a margin. Then when you don't need them, you use them in other people's businesses and you still make margin. It's like, it's no brainer.
It is, especially for a guy like you who has a lot of influence in your area, and you know a lot of real estate flippers, I'm sure. All right. So like, I don't know if Austin owns properties up in Columbus. I'll just assume he does. If you buy an HVAC business, guess who Austin's going to use now?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing. So you're going to buy a business that's already making money. Chances are the guy doesn't really market that hard. He's kind of a blue collar guy. We all know this. That's why we built this page. And then you go in there, you start scaling it up, and then you just start texting all your buddies who own real estate. Hey, because you know their pain points. You know and you just fix it. You just say, hey, I hated when HVAC companies did this. I'll do these 3 things. Next thing you know, you're going to have a whole new flow of business.
Absolutely.
I love the Airbnb thing. Yeah. If a cleaning company in Columbus just said, I'm gonna take one person and put them to go all out on all these Airbnb people to try to talk to them and get their business, they would make a fortune.
Yep, absolutely.
Nobody's doing it.
No, they're not. Dude, my brain was doing this as you was talking about the HVAC thing, because it's something I'm super excited about. And what did it for me is looking at my P&L for the year, and I'm like, I just see how much we're getting banged on HVAC.
Yep.
You know, $87 to change a furnace filter, $87. And I don't understand why they don't do a maintenance system. Maybe because they like getting those $87, but wouldn't it be nice if you could just get like a monthly check in your business to help cash flow? Smart. And just do a quarterly service? Hey, we're going to quarterly service all your properties, take care of all this, but you're going to pay a monthly subscription to be able to do that. I mean, like our technology company that we use that provides like, I just got a brand new laptop as well. Provides like wiring, help. I don't want to spend 10 minutes trying to figure out my printer, but I call them and they fix it in 2 seconds, but we have to pay a monthly fee for that. So I was just thinking like that would be a no-brainer.
And people like that, especially real estate investors. Then you have your costs, you know where they're at. It's like the pest control company. They come here every month. We don't wait till we have a spider and call them. They come and then we don't have spiders. We used to have spiders when we first moved here. And the guys aren't thinking, but imagine you get 300-400 houses like that on the monthly.
Yeah.
And then every morning you wake up and there's just like money hitting.
I've heard the pest control industry has insane margins.
Yeah, it's a great business. I was involved in one in New Jersey, and I got the guy a bunch of apartment complexes. It's got huge margins.
So that same podcast I was listening to, I think this was on the same episode. He was talking about how pest control company was taking these two owners of a pest control company, took it public. So they did an IPO on this local pest control company, how it started. And I didn't get into the details of it. So I'm sure they expanded or started buying up and put it all underneath the same, but they did an IPO. And so instead of getting a 3 to 5X, they got a 14X on their pest control because they went public with it. I was like, now that put a whole nother train of thought about buying the business, scaling it, and pushing it out because the multiple was so insane. So I forgot it was like they both walked away with over 50 million from that sale on a pest control company.
See, and I think that's what, because in real estate, you make money 4 ways over. You're making it on appreciation, the debt pay down, the cash flow, and the tax advantages.
Right.
But your multiples are so much higher than a business, especially when cap rates were, I sold an apartment building. It was probably like a 4 cap in Columbus, Ohio. Wow. Like it was insane when debt was real cheap. But you look at the multiples in real estate, and I think, that's part of what gets me juiced about real estate is the multiples. But now hearing stories like that, you're not just going to get 3X on a business. You could get 4 or 5. You could scale it national and get 14. That's that's real estate.
Yeah. Yep. I thought you had to have a technology business to get a 10X plus. And when I heard that, I was like, man, that just expanded my belief system.
One of the reasons pest control is so good is because there's a barrier to entry because you need that license.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just have any old guy like, hey, I'm going to start a pest control company like they can in so many others. So there's just not enough pest control companies to get the work done.
That's a good point, Kevin. Anytime there's a harder barrier of entry, you're going to have a more profitable business. Your margins are going to be higher, and it's going to sell at a higher multiple.
That's a big reason I do commercial is because there's a barrier to entry. They have to have certain levels of insurance to get in. And most of these guys cleaning gutters on houses, they don't have any insurance. Of course, they say they're fully insured.
Yeah.
But they're not.
Yeah, our staff accountant, he gets all that stuff up front when we got to use vendors. It's like, hey, got a whole checklist. You don't send all this stuff in, you don't get paid.
Right.
And you'd be surprised. Yeah, I'm bonded and insured. Okay, cool.
You will not get paid. Know that going in. All of a sudden, they'll change their tune.
Yeah, I mean, I was dealing with 2 lawsuits this morning from tenants, previous tenants, and I have to be involved because my team doesn't want to be involved with these people. How nasty they are.
Wow.
But I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, dude, you got someone out here cleaning gutters on the outside of your building. I mean, what is it for them to just, the next thing you know, if you're not properly insured, it's game over.
Yeah, really
big problems.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tell us about what you got going on. So you've got your private group that's taking place. What's some of the things people can plug in and get to know Tarry more?
Yeah, for sure, man. So the name of the community is Scalers Only. And so for me, I didn't want to just do a one-on-one, because I was trying to look at what my goals were long term and make sure that other people's goals aligned with my goals within the group. So it's a monthly group. We meet every week at 4:00. So we do 2 topic calls. So we go over just completely different stuff. So tomorrow we're going to go over very, very unique, out of the box, creative strategies to acquire real estate. Everyone's still trying to use cold calls and this and that. And it's we got a VA that's doing dartboard strategy, market offers on the MLS, 50 a day. And then those become leads that our acquisition guys can then go. There's just a bunch of different, cool stuff you can do. So, we'll go over different topics, accounting, things that I know that are going to be most beneficial for the group. And then every other week we do a community call where we actually dive into their problems, what's going on. Hey, this is something that happened in my business. This is where I'm struggling. And then we figure out what's going to be the resource for them to be able to help them out. And then we have a Dropbox link with like our profitability matrices, custom spreadsheets, all the stuff that like would come in like a nice shiny platform, but maybe investors just aren't there to be able to pay for a whole Salesforce platform or something. So we provide all that stuff as well. And then we got a online chat where, if you got a question, you're in a rut, you just drop your question there. We answer it in real time. So I did it initially because I was running these masterminds, and I remember it was the fourth one I ran, and I would do it anywhere from 12 to 15 people, and everyone was just like blown away. And they're like, well, what's next? What do I do? I don't know what to do. And I was like, well, and I just kind of made it up. I was like, well, what? And I was like, hey, here comes the $20,000 pitch. And they're like, they kind of did this. I'm like, I'm just kidding. What if we created something that was monthly where, since you guys have been here, I mean, this should probably be $1,000 a month the way I'm thinking about it in my head, but I'll charge you guys $297. And so I've been charging $297 for the last 6 months for this group, which I think is completely undervalued. But December 31st, I'm going to $1,000 a month just because it is a lot of my time, because I have to prepare for it. I have to make sure that, I'm keeping tabs on everybody, holding people accountable, all that. It's a lot of work, right? But that group has been a good deal flow source for us. It's been nice to see people succeed, getting them plugged in with the right lenders, the right community banks, all that types of stuff. It's good, man. So right now we've got 50 in the group. I'm going to probably take about 100 before I can shut it down. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Well, the cool thing about it, when you raise that to $1,000, your group is just going to get so much better because that barrier of entry, and that's still that's a bargain for the amount of money that they're being able to make.
$12,000 a year. One mistake will cost you a lot more than 12,000.
Oh,
absolutely.
Way more.
Yeah. So
I know that.
But yeah, I'm really excited about that group, and just seeing, like I said, seeing guys succeed and being a little small part of their success is super fulfilling. And then, yeah, man, we're going to keep cranking. We just started buying rentals again 2 weeks ago. So we kind of took a hiatus for, I would say, 3 to 4 months where we were just wholesaling, getting things off our books, setting up our Airbnb business. We have another program that we're working with the state right now. I'm super excited about, where we're going to be housing former felons. And quite honestly, former felons have been my greatest tenants, because if you've been in the pen for 5 or 10, you ain't going back. You ain't going back. If you're in a different neighborhood or different area, bro, you ain't going back. So they tend to be people that take care of things the most, take pride in where they live. They don't cause any issues. But we're running this program through the state where we're housing them. And then I'm providing entrepreneurship training for some of these guys. Cool. And then also, too, we're going to be utilizing these guys in our construction company. So we're getting paid through the state to house them. And then also, too, we got a referral source for our construction company. And then at the same time, we're providing entrepreneurship training for them, too.
I think that's great. And, I used to have guys who worked for me, and I knew some young kids who went to jail and I used to tell them, you got to be an entrepreneur, because you basically have a death sentence once you come out of jail with that. There's people, they sold weed, and like 20 years later, they can't get a job. It's so ridiculous. It should be, if you don't get in trouble after X amount of years, it gets washed.
It should be.
Absolutely, not murdering someone. I'm talking about weed and like all these other things. People do stupid shit when they're 19. Why do they have to pay for it when they're 36 with a family? It makes no sense.
It makes zero sense, man. So me just being in the nitty gritty of this business for so long, you start to understand, like, hey, man, some of the best people have had some of the hardest lives.
Absolutely.
And it's got to reform. It's got to change or something. But I don't know. It's my little small part of trying to make it better.
I like it. Yeah, I've hired many people in that thing, and I've never had a problem with one. They just want to work, they want opportunity, and then they're loyal because you gave them the shot. And I had lots of good luck with that. So Terry, can you put all that stuff in the comments about your group, anything like that? And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I love the fact that that you're seeing opportunity in business, and you started in real estate. Kevin, I think that's what we need to really be preaching to as our real estate friends, because there's so much opportunity for them to pivot. They're going to have a leg up already because they're used to running teams. They're used to, finding leads. They know how to market, and they also understand financing side as well. They know how to deal with banks, private money,
no brainer,
and everything that's got to be involved with the business.
100%. And I love the monthly group. Chris and I are going to do one. Mark Evans is going to be involved, because when you go to these one-time masterminds, they're great, but a lot of times a week later, they die down on it. Yep. You need that accountability. You come in, you say, hey, what do you think of this deal? And then we just go over it. And you're doing that week after week, 12 weeks, 14 weeks, 16 weeks, you're going to make deals. If you're committed to going to the group, you're going to make it happen.
I mean, even from the mastermind, I still got to get through all this crap from Mark Evans.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff.
5 weeks ago now, and I'm just now getting through it. But but if you're accountable every week, every month, man, it keeps you
right. If you had a meeting with him about that and a couple other guys at 1 o'clock today, you'd be getting busy.
Do what?
Yeah, I said if you had a meeting about that thing with Mark and everybody at 1 o'clock, you'd have to go do it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
And you were paying money. People pay money, pay attention, they'll get it done. So yeah, I think it's great. It's a no-brainer. You got to get in a group.
You have to, man. One of the biggest game changers I ever did. Mark, the very first real estate I went to one by myself in 2013, right after I bought all those houses. I went to another one in Vegas with Austin Rutherford in the end of 2016. And I didn't actually pay like real money to go to something. It was Mark Evans. In 2018, I paid $5,000 to go to an event. And I'm like counting heads. I'm like, he's got 15 people here, $5,000. This is how he's making all his money. And then I got in there, and all the questions I wanted answered were completely thrown out, and I got new questions.
Yeah,
when I went there,
that works.
I wasn't thinking right.
It's gonna be awesome, Terry. Thanks so much for coming on.
Appreciate you, brother.
Guys.
All right, I'm gonna message you.
Yep.
All right,
talk to you guys.